We're now at Daf Tzadi Amud Beis, and we're up to the Rabbanon. The Gemara now is throwing the ball back into the court of the Rabbanon because the Gemara holds that Rebbe has a very strong argument when he says, as we saw on the bottom of Amud Aleph, that in a case of Mechubarim Behetera, which should be compared to the Rosho Shel Ola, we don't need a ribui. So let's use, therefore, the ribui for Isura, not for Hetera. And what's Isura? That's Gid Anosha. But only if it's Mechubar. It's in the original state. It's in the Erech. So the Gemara answers, you know what? You can't be marbe burning on the Mizbeach the Gid Anosha, even if it's still mechubar, because we have a principle called Mimashki Yisrael Menamuta Beficha, Menamuta Yisrael. Whatever is Asur Fachilas Hejo, that we're not allowed to eat, is Asur Fachilas Mizbeach, is not allowed to be consumed on the Mizbeach. The Gid Anosha is Asur Lachilas Hejot, and therefore, ipso facto, based on this famous drasha, which appears all over Shas, from a pasuk in Yechezkel, there's no way that you can offer on the Mizbeach, even if it's still mechubar, part of the Yerech, the Gid Anosha, because then the Mizbeach is eating a Gid Anosha. We can't allow that. The Rebbe, what's Rebbe going to say with me? Mashki Yisrael ben Amutul Yisrael. Midi dahavi achelav v'dam. Well, chelav v'dam is also to Yisrael. They're both an Isakaris. And yet, that's exactly what we burn on the Mizbeach. So you know what? According to Rebbe, Mimashki Yisrael is only coming to exclude a treifa, an animal that's a treifa. Okay, there may be other cases, let's say. Let's say you bought a carbon mincha before the Shtei Lechman Shvuas. Okay, again, this is a whole sugya called Mimashki Yisrael. And Rebbe holds that it doesn't apply to the parts of the animal that has to be that are required haktor al gabi mizbeach. For example, the yerech with its gid inside of it. That's not mimashki Yisrael. I mean, the ola is an ola de hetera. For Rabbana counter argue. What are you proving me from chelim and dam? That's misvasa b'kach. I mean, the Torah tells you explicitly that that's what has to be burnt on the Mizbeach. But the Torah doesn't tell you that Gid Anosh has to be burnt on the Mizbeach. V'ushteit does. Okay, so let's summarize the bottom line of Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. What does he get from this whole presentation? Price number one, price number two, that there's a machlokes with regard to the Gid Anoshim and Olah, when it's mechubar, it's in its original state inside the yerech. Okay. Now I want to read to you a footnote here where it summarizes everything. Very beautiful footnote. I was very impressed here. It emerges from this analysis of the machlokes Shin Rebbe and the Chachamim that there's a double machlokes. Each one is matir and each one is machmir. Rebbe prohibits offering on the Mizbeach bones and sinews once they've been separated from the meat, where the Chachamim say, Afilu Pirshu, that was the ribui. On the other hand, Rebbe permits putting the yerech on the Mizbeach, even though it has what? It has the Gid Anosh in it. The Rabbanan, on the other hand, are going to be machmer with regard to the yerech of the Girana, so they don't have that ribui. But on the other hand, they're mekil with regard to atzamos, gidin, etc., even though they were separated from the rest of the old. So now, just 1 second. Oh, so now we have machlokes between the Chachamim and Rebbe with regard to the yerech that has within it, in the case of an ola, the yerech that has within it the gira noshe. The Rabbanan are mekil. Just 1 second. Let me get the names right. No. I'm sorry. Rebbe is mekil because he has that separate ribui that teaches you that you can put on the altar and burn the yerech with the gid in it, and the chachamim prohibit it. So then, if I understand correctly, and I hope I'm on target here, there are the Mishnah that says that Giranosha applies even in Kodshim, that would reflect the sheet of the Chachamim who would prohibit, in the case of a Korban Ola, placing the Yerech on the Mizbeach with the Giranosha in it. Because Mimashki Yisrael, etc., which means that the Achilas Mizbeach of the Giranosha is prohibited. So that's what the Mishnah means. According to Rebbe, on the other hand, you cannot accept the Mishnah because the Mishnah assumes that there's an overlap between Kodshim, the Isur Kodshim, and the Isur of Giranosha, whereas Rebbe says that as long as you still have the Yerech, you could put the Yerech on the Mizbeach and burn it together with the Giranosha. Okay. Omar Rav Huna, Giranosha shel Ola, Cholto litapuach. In the middle of the Mizbeach, there was something called a tapuach, where they put all the ashes after the burning, and then they took it out to some place outside the city. And the Giranosha of the Ola, which sounds like just 1 second. Oh, I got it. Rav Huna is standing on the shoulders of the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan hold the following: you bring the yerech on top of the mizbeach. You can't burn it until you remove the giranosha. You'll remove the giranosha and throw it, says Rav Huna, into the tapuach. Very strange. Why do you bring the yerech up on top of the mizbeach without removing the giranosha first? Well, that's going to be the sugya that we're learning now. Amar Rav Chisda, Mari Dichi. Mari Dichi's way of saying that, you're full of hot air. In other words, Who said such a thing? Miksiv al kain lo yochal hamizbeach. What are you assuming that you cannot burn on the mizbeach? The giranoshe. Miksiv al kain lo yochal hamizbeach. Does anywhere does the pasuk say that the giranosh cannot be eaten by the mizbeach? Al kain lo yochlu bnei Yisrael. Rav Huna mimashki Yisrael menamuta beficha. So again, we get back to the argument between Rebbe and the Chachamim, and basically Rav Huna is standing on the shoulders of the Chachamim, and therefore there's no way, no how that you could allow the mizbeach to consume the giranosha because it's also to us hedjo, and therefore ipso facto it's also to the mizbeach. Meisvei, the Gemara asks the following kasha from a brayso: Giranosha shel shlomim mechabdo la'ama v'shel ola malehu. Why do you assume, Rav Huna, that we cannot burn the giranosha? After all, it says over here that shel ola ma'alehu, ma'alehu, my love, ma'alehu umaktiro. I'm not exactly sure why the Gemara is objecting to Rav Huna from this brisa. What about the brisa that reflects the sheet of the Chachamim? I don't know. But in any event, lo maleu v'choltzeu. You bring up the yerech on top of the mizbeach, and then choltzeu, as we said before, means that you remove the giranosha. Frek the Gemara, that's a question that we implied before. Why don't you remove the giranosha before you take it onto the mizbeach? We have to be very respectful to the mizbeach, and if we start cutting up the yerech into small pieces until we finally remove the giranosha, and then we take the yerech without the giranosha up to the mizbeach, that's a violation of the respect that we have to give to the mizbeach. Tani kavasi Rav Huna, giranosha shel shlom mechabdo liyoma v'shel ola cholzo l'tapua. Again, cholzo means it's already up on the mizbeach because it came up as a yerech, and now you remove the giranosha and you throw it together with all the ashes into the tapua. Tanan Hasam. Now we have a Mishnah in Tamid. Tapua chaya. Okay, so the remainder of our Amud, I think, is a semi-agadic, a quasi-agadic. The Mishnah in Tamid says Tapua chaya b'emtza mizbeach ha'amim haya olav kishlosh meos kur. The ashes that piled up until they finally took it out to the Beis Hadeshen, that was 300 kur. He tells you here on the bottom that that's basically 625 cubic amos. Massive amount. Omarava Guzman. Can't be. This is just an exaggeration. They would certainly remove the tapuach more frequently before it accumulated 300 kur. Now, another case where Rava made the same comment is Hishku esatami because shelzah. Wow. When they fed the lamb, they gave it to drink before they slaughtered it for the carbon tamid. And apparently, if the lamb drinks, then the liquid makes it easier to remove the hides. In any event, they gave it to drink from a gold cup. Says Rava Guzman. This is an exaggeration. What does it mean, exaggeration? They did use a particular cup, which was made of copper, not earthenware, and the copper that was used in the Mikdash was burnished. I don't know what the word burnished means, but I think it means it was shined, I guess. I don't know. So it looked like gold, and that's why they exaggerated and they said it was a gold goblet. Omer of Ami, Dibra Torah Loshen Avoy, Dibru Neviim B'Loshen Avoy, Dibru Chachamim B'Loshen Avoy. This kind of exaggerated language, which we call a hyperbole, was employed by the Mishnah, by the Neviim, and by the Torah itself. And we go through it. Dibru Chacham B'Loshen Avoy Hadamar. Right? We have these two cases of Number one, how large was the pile of ashes on the mizbeach on the tapuach before they got rid of it? 300 kur, and the exaggeration of the lamb drinking from a gold goblet. What about Torah? Where does the Torah use hyperboles? Dibra Torah lashon avah. Okay, now we're talking about the report of the Meraglim. We're almost at Tu B'Av. I don't know why we're still talking about the Meraglim. Okay. Arim Gedolos B'Tzur B'Shamayim. They describe the large cities that were fortified all the way up to heaven. There's no way you could build a wall all the way up to heaven. Maybe today you could. Divrei Nevi'im, where do we find that the Nevi'im use hyperboles? It says, Vatibaka ha'aretz b'kolam. What happens is that when Adoniyo, the son of David, declared, he wants to be the king after David dies. David is already close to 70 or maybe 70. And David wants to make sure that they anoint and coronate his son Shlomo. So he immediately, when he hears about Adoniyo, he goes ahead and he coronates Shlomo HaMelech in a celebration that was so loud that it sounded like an earthquake, a hyperbole. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Nachmeni Amar Shmuel B'Shloshim Makomos Dibru Chachamim B'Loshen Avoy. Okay, we had already the case of the golden goblet, but Eluhem, he doesn't have the golden goblet. Apparently, he holds that they actually did give the lamb to drink from a golden goblet. Anyway, tapuach, right? The 300 kur till they took out the tapuach. Gefen. Uparochos. So what's going on here? Tapuach hadamoran, that's the case of the ashes and the mound of ashes. Gefen, what's gefen? So for that, we have to look in a Mishnah, in the Seth Midos. Gefen shel zav. Well, this is wild. Guys, I don't know if you knew this. I never knew this. This is mind-boggling. Gefen shel zav. They made a grapevine out of gold. Okay. So medes al pischo shel heichal. They stood it up at the entrance into the heichal, and people used to bring more gold and put it on this this grapevine. Mudla al gabe kunsos, right? They suspended it with poles. Kol mishoyim esnadev gagiro eshkol. People would bring a donation of a golden grape or a golden cluster of grapes, mevi v'tolaba, and they would hang it up on this pole. Amar Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok, ma'isa hayu v'nimnu aleh shlosh me'as kohanim lefanos. So there was so heavy accumulation of these golden grapes that we needed 300 kohanim to clear it off. And it can't be that there were 300 kohanim. This is an exaggeration. Had there been so much gold hanging on the grapevine would certainly have broken under its weight. Haroches. By the way, notice that all these cases of hyperboles in the Mishnayos, in the Chachamim, they're all related to the Beis Hamikdash. Haroches Isnan. Okay, the proches was very heavy. Reb Shimon Gamliel Mishum Reb Shimon ben Haskan Paroches Ovya Tefach. It was a thick tefach, a thickness of tefach. Val Shivim Ushnayim Nirim Nereges. Whoa! It was woven on 72 shafts. Val Kol Nima v'Nima. Each thread was Esrim v'Arba Chutim, 24 strands. Arba Archa Arba Bi'ama V'Rachva Esrim Bi'ama U'Mishmonim U'Shtei Ribui Nasas, made from 820,000 threads. Imagine how heavy it was. U'Shtayim Osim B'Shana, they made it twice a year. Now, apparently, the paroches could be contaminated. It could accept tumah. And that's a very big problem, how how it could be makabel tumah. But anyway, let's assume the parochas was makabel tumah. Now they had to remove the parochas and put it into the mikvah, like any kli that was makabel tumah. Shlosh me'os kohanim ad bilin also. They needed 300 kohanim to pick up this heavy parochas and put it into the mikvah. And this is a hyperbole. Okay, now we go back to our subject of Gid Anosha. B'yerech shel yeminu, b'yerech shel smol. The Chachamim are of the opinion that both the Gid Anosha on the left thigh and the Gid Anosha on the right thigh were both also b'toras Gid Anosha. And that's against Rabbi Yehuda, Maslis Lok Rabbi Yehuda, Desani, we learned to Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Einu Noeg El Ba'achas. Only one of the two thighs has the Isser of Gid Anosha. Which one is it? Hadas Machras Eshel Yamin. Logic would tip us in favor of assuming it was on the right side. That has to do with the angel that was fighting with Yaakov Avinu, and which thigh did he injure? And if you assume that the angel was using his right hand, which is a more powerful hand, and he was facing Yaakov, therefore he was facing Yaakov's left hand, and then he pulled Yaakov and hit the thigh on the right side. Anyway, this is only das machras, meaning it doesn't sound like Rabbi Yehuda was definite about it. He didn't come to any definite conclusion. The Gemara now doesn't understand what this means. Hadas machras shel yamin mifshat pshita leila Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda originally was in doubt about it, but then he came to a certain conclusion, and he was definite about it. At the end of the day, he definitely held that it's on the right side. Umay das. So what does it say that, the logic weighs in? It doesn't sound like he was absolutely certain about it. He meant das Torah. That there's no question that the Torah indicates in the parsha of Yaakov and the angel that we're talking about the Gid Anosha on the right thigh. And the Gemara later on is going to quote a pasuk that also indicates that it was on the right thigh. Oh, Dilma, maybe the language of Rabbi Yehuda in the price of das machras shel yamin sfukim esafkale. Rabbi Yehuda was never actually sure about it. Umay das, however, the logic weighs in das nota. It leans towards the conclusion that it was the right thigh, not the left thigh. But there was no certainty about it. Toshma. Oh, he says here in the footnote, the angel's right hand, which presumably dislocated Yaakov's hip, was originally positioned opposite Jacob's left side, and then when the angel wrapped around Jacob's body, extended into Jacob's right side, dislocating the right. Toshma. Now we have a Mishnah in Masechet Pesachim, and now we're going to talk about Nosar. Okay, we're a few minutes over time, but I want to finish the daf, if you can stick with me. Although I have to admit, the next piece is very challenging, but we'll try it. What does the Mishnah say? Psachim, hatzamos, vagidim, vanosar, yisrufu l'shishasar. We have leftovers on nosar, and they have to be burnt, ba'esh tisrof. But we can't burn it on the 15th when it became nosar, right? Because all the avodas hakarban of the Pesach was on the 14th. If it was not eaten on the night of the 15th and it was left over to the morning of the 15th, it became nosar, but we couldn't burn it until the 16th. And why is that? Because the 15th is Yontif, and ein sarfim kodshim psulim b'Yontif. It's a violation of Yontif. When we learned this Mishnah in Psachim, we raised the following problem. It says here, Gidin. Hani Gidin Maya V'Nitar. Well, what are these Gidin that are mentioned here in the Mishnah? Igidi Basar is Lechlinu. I mean, the Gemara is assuming now that they would have eaten anything that has to be eaten as basar on the night of the 15th. So why are you burning it on the 16th? The idiyasa, so you tell me maybe they didn't eat it and they left it over. Maybe I don't know what happened, why they did such a thing, a terrible thing. Hainu nosa. But you already said here, hatzamos vagidin vanosa. Apparently, gidin and nosa are two separate categories. Ella, but rather gidei savor. Now, let's understand. Nosar only applies to something that should have been eaten and it wasn't eaten in its time. However, that which is not eaten is not subject to nosar. So we have a new category here called gidin, and we're referring to the gidei tzavor, the sinews of the neck, and they are not eaten. Again, why they're not eaten, we have to still figure that out. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, but anyway. So the Gemara asks the following question. If you're telling me that the sinews of the neck of the lamb of Pesach is not eaten, or not eaten, Ilav Basaninu doesn't have the status of Basa that has to be eaten, right? Because the Pasuk says, Lishtinu, why don't you just chuck it out? Why are you burning it? Burning sounds like, it's shayach to have a status of basar, and you should have eaten, but you didn't eat it. So why are you burning it? Only edible meat becomes nosa and requires sreifa. The inedible parts of the animal may be discarded. And that would include the hard sinews of the neck. I guess the hard sinews of the neck are so hard you can't even eat them. This is what we need. We need Rav Chizda to tell us that when the Mishnah in Psachim is talking about Gidin, and they're not Nosar, and they have to be burnt on the 16th of Nisan, he's referring, the Mishnah, is referring to what? To the Gid Anosh. So what's going on over here? Why is the Gid Anosh being burnt on the 16th? I'll leave it to Rabbi Yehuda Diomar Eino Noeg Ella Bi'achas. That the Gid Anosh only applies to one of the thighs and not to both thighs. And therefore the Gid Anosh has to be burnt on the 16th of Nisan. Why is that so? Just because Gid Anosh only applies to one thigh? One says the following. You know how I explain it? I can explain this Mishnah according to Rabbi Yehuda in the way that Rav Chizda explained that we're referring to the Gid Anosh according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Sfuke Mesafkele. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't know which sinew, whether it's on the right yerech or on the left yerech, is prohibited. One of them is permitted. But because we don't know if it's Gid Anosh, we can't eat it. Because you cannot eat the Gid Anosh of a Korban Pesach. So you can't eat it. What are you going to do with it? It might be that it's not the Gid Anosh. Will the real Gid Anosh please stand up? So if you don't know if it's the Gid Anosh, it might not be the Gid Anosh, which means it's part of the basar, means it has to be eaten, but you can't eat it because it might be the Gid Anosh. Then you have to leave it over, and when you leave it over, you're going to have to burn it on the suffix, on the tzad, that maybe it is meat, because it's not Gid Anosh. But if you hold if Rabbi Yehuda holds without a shadow of a doubt, which sinew, let's call it the right thigh, is Gid Anosh, then why are you burning it? You only burn nosar when it lends itself to achila, but it doesn't lend itself to achila. And as far as the other Gid Anosh on the other thigh, well, that's nothing. Just discard it. That Tera lichle the Suri l'shadi. Oh, the Gemara spells it out, sorry. Right? So that which said Tera he should have eaten. And if he didn't eat it, then we have to burn it on the 16th as Nosa. So anyway, the Gemara's final conclusion here is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the status of Giranasha, which thigh it is a suffix. Omer of Iko Bar Chanina, no, I'm not going to accept it. Certainly, it's the right side that has Giranasha. Initially, he knew which was the sinew, the Giranasha from the right side, and he could identify the Giranasha from the left side. But then they got mixed up together, and they all look the same. So now we don't know which came from the right and which came from the left, and therefore we cannot eat it because maybe it's Giranasha. We cannot discard it because maybe it's basar and it's not Giranasha, and therefore he cannot eat it, it becomes nosar, and that's why he has to burn it on the 16th. Okay, then this is where we'll stop, even though we're in the middle of a sugya, but Linetta will pick it up tomorrow, Daf Sadi Aleph. Okay, then?